previous pharmacists, the state did exactly what we asked the court to preclude them from doing regarding the result of a pharmacy board hearing. In their motions that they filed, they stated that they sought to introduce this evidence as anticipatory impeachment to get ahead of what they believe the defense would elicit from them on cross-examination. Instead, what just happened was they made it a point to end their direct examination of that pharmacist by first asking whether he was in fact terminated or not from the hospital, and then the next question immediately after that was whether his ability to be a pharmacist was removed from him by the pharmacy board.
You're talking about eliciting the testimony? Okay, I think I got you, okay.
There is absolutely no other reason to have elicited that testimony but to have bolstered his testimony to the jury to suggest, well, he wasn't fired, the pharmacy board didn't take his rights to be a pharmacist away from him, so clearly what he's saying has some weight. That is per se improper bolstering. It does not go to his credibility in the sense of anticipatory impeachment. It is simply bolstering. It's what we sought to prevent this entire time, and the entire time we filed our motions, we stated we were never going to get into the results of any hearings to specifically avoid any circumstances such as that. And it played out exactly how we suggested it would play out. That's what I wanted to put on the record and ask the court to advise the state to stick to what they put in their pleadings regarding if they want to get into anticipatory impeachment, the court has allowed them to do so explicitly because you found it relevant to credibility based upon their representations. What happened there clearly wasn't anticipatory impeachment because he didn't even have his privileges taken from him. It was bolstering.
Okay. Ms. Swanson?
Ms. Sawyer?
Ms. Sawyer, I'm sorry.
That is all right. Your Honor, in the course of the testimony, before we even got to that issue about the licensure board with Mr. Dresbach, he indicated he had been placed on administrative leave for 8 months with the hospital. He also indicated he'd spoken to a pharmacy board representative, which is exactly what Talon Schroyer had indicated. So then the logical question is, were you terminated from the hospital, and did you lose your license? The answer was no. So it was just to finish answering the question, Your Honor.
But he's alluding to that you guys had represented that you weren't going to do that behavior.
I believe your order indicated, since it does go to credibility, that we would be allowed to ask that question, Your Honor.
How is the non-action of a completely entire entity go to credibility?
Well, I think the fact that he was placed on administrative leave certainly goes to a credibility issue of was he ultimately terminated, and the fact that he was interviewed as part of a pharmacy board investigator, that also goes to credibility, and he needs to answer the end result.
It's still a specific act. We're not talking about a wrong, a 607. You're talking about a specific act.
Again, Your Honor, I think it just addresses the end question of did you lose your license? No.
Anything else?
Your Honor, if the court is inclined to allow similar testimony to be elicited, we'd ask that the court instruct the jury in regards to how to accept that testimony, because otherwise it's inescapable that a layperson hearing that from the state of Ohio being asked that to conclude their the testimony of direct examination is simply to say, hey, by the way, someone else didn't take your privileges because what you said was right or what you did was right. And that's the exact thing we sought to preclude when we filed those motions. And their representations to the court in their response to our motion was that their belief was that we would elicit that on cross-examination and that they would do it in an anticipatory way to get ahead to essentially go to the credibility of their witnesses before we could attack it. And what we told the court is that we had no intention, whether they weren't put on, whether they had their privileges revoked or not, that we had no intention of ever wanting to introduce the end results of those hearings to the pharmacists, nurses, or anyone else. And now what played out was the exact scenario we sought to preclude.
Well, doesn't a curative instruction accent the issue?
It may very well, which is why I would ask the court, first and foremost, to instruct the state to not elicit any more testimony about the results of these hearings, whether it be for the pharmacists or the nurses. And if If the court is inclined to not do so, in the future, we would ask for limiting instructions if the court's going to allow the state to bolster their witnesses' credibility this way.
Well, what we're gonna do is, if we're gonna get to those issues, if that's gonna be brought up during the state's questioning, sidebar before the question comes out. I don't want it out of the barn until we can put a record on there, and then I'll give a ruling. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I don't feel a curative instruction helps us here, because I'm accenting something that was just basically the end of the questioning. I don't want to put any false light that they should told not to consider it.
Again, Your Honor,
I mean, if you want to propose a potential thing, we'll talk, but, you know, for right now, if you're going to get into those issues, sidebar first.
And Your Honor, if I can, just for the record, to complete our part of the record, I believe when it was discussed in voir dire, we thought a supplemental response, so part of what we were addressing in that question was based upon that supplemental response and the fact that it was addressed in voir dire, Your Honor, just to make it for the record.
Okay.
I don't believe we have to say anything further, Your Honor. Your Honor's ruling is very clear. It doesn't reference any doors having been opened. Your ruling said it was relevant to credibility based off their representations, and they did the exact opposite of what they represented to the court. So I don't believe I need to say any more.
Okay. We've got a record then. Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am going to call the next state's witness. And I have the settlement agreement from the Board of Pharmacy to present at this time.
Wait, I'm sorry, you're being called as the state's witness.
I'm calling the next state's witness.
Oh.
Okay? He's a pharmacist. He signed a settlement agreement. Settlement agreement is here. I'm tendering it. If you have an objection about me talking about it, now's the time to do it, because the judge has said that he doesn't want necessarily to have this happen in open court. So if you'd like to see the settlement agreement, and then we can talk about it.
Okay, let's take a couple minutes then. David, go back and run a little interference for me. Because I still have one more issue to talk about.
Your Honor, tell me when you are ready, Sam. I'll address this. We would object to the notice of settlement agreements in connection with the investigation of Mount Carmel and William Husel, dated March 4th, 2020, marked as State's Exhibit 25, from being introduced. It really dovetails on the argument that we just raised in terms of bolstering, but the litigation itself is names Randy Miles, who will be the next witness. It also includes information as to which cases or complaints were dismissed against individuals, which goes back to this bolstering argument. And then it lists certain pharmacists that are included in the settlement. I think if the state wants to elicit testimony about a settlement and that Randy Miles signed a settlement, or that there was a settlement, we certainly would not object to, was there a settlement? Yes. What was the amount? Did you sign the settlement? Yes, I did. No objection to that 3 questions, but to introduce the settlement itself, we certainly have an objection to that.
I don't think it goes back to the jury. I mean, she can allude to it, but I agree. Are those 3 questions acceptable? for your purpose?
There may be some more, but they would all be in that neighborhood. I'm not going to get into the allegations. I would only elicit what the actual agreement was, which involved a fine and some remedial action. We can allow
So you
the
had to
court
do
to
like
look at it.
seminars or something?
Your Honor, I'm
You had to
sorry.
do like seminars, continuing ed or something, or?
It had to do, well, Diane has the document, so thank you. There's a recital of terms. I can approach the, do we want to approach with the court reporter? And
For the record, this is State's Exhibit
it's 25.
5.
I'm happy to accept whatever direction he wants to take.
Well, oh, there's more. Hold on.
There's a recitation of in the allegations, which I was never going to get into.
Well, 2, we shouldn't get into that everybody denies everything and the
Yeah,
usual
It's an agreed
release
settlement
document.
entry without an admission of anything.
Sometimes it's better for the judge to bring the witness in and say, look, this is gonna come up, I'm not interested in this.
You can have, if I'm allowed to lead, I can lead right through and ask for yes or no answers, and that way we avoid any extemporaneous.
I assume outside of 2, does any of this really matter to you?
Well, I guess then it becomes a relevant issue, but can I read that?
Yeah.
You can have it while I do the rest of the examination.
Well, no, let's just finish, let's resolve the narrative with best practice. I appreciate it.
2 is your usual release. Denial. The other are, I don't like going into a bunch of sanctions. I said I don't like going into a bunch of sanctions.
Okay, so you would intend to say the terms of the agreement are beginning with 3, 4, and 5? I'm not sure how, okay. Fine. Why don't we do a stipulation as to this?
Perfect.
And I think that's much cleaner and the witness,
Those are good questions that you asked, and that's it.
yeah, was there a lawsuit, was there, obviously, the hospital, was there a settlement, and these were the things?
Yeah.
Okay, we can work on stipulation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we'll do the stipulation on the record at the appropriate time and then
Yeah.
supplement it with a written formal stipulation?
Yes, that'd be appropriate. We won't even have to we won't even have to ask the witness about it.
Right,
Okay.
and, yeah, I think that's perfect.
Okay, the third issue, and this is one, Ms. Schaefer was approached, one of the jurors went over to the other jury room to get something out of the refrigerator, I believe, and they were in there speculating about you all's tactics and the way you're approaching the case. When I heard this, I was gonna direct them, you're not to discuss the case, the tactics, or anything. Okay? But I thought it was important enough for you guys to know that that was going on. I think I can cure it with instructing them not to discuss the case at all. But but they were, I guess, trying to analyze you all's tactics. Any commentary?
Yes, Judge, I think the proper thing to do would be to bring the individuals in one at a time and make proper inquiries as to exactly what was discussed, what was said, and whether they fully understood the court's orders not to discuss this case prior to the case being turned over for deliberations.
I have a real problem doing it in open court. There are jurors, there are anonymities there, and it's being streamed.
I agree.
We can do it in camera with lead counsel if you wish,
I think that's probably the way to go.
and the court reporter and me. Okay, but I don't have the details as to who was what. I don't know which jurors to pull out. I know which jury room it was, and maybe we there, but I don't know if they switched back or forth or anything. So we may have to question all 18.
We wouldn't have an objection. Well, I was going to say the first thing that might, if both sides agree, that maybe David could inquire who went in this room during the break, and then break it down from there.
Did Darcy talk to you all about this?
No, this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
We defer to the court, Your Honor. I think some inquiry is appropriate. If you can narrow it down, that would be helpful.
Okay.
We don't want to spend another 2 days talking to everyone if we don't have to.
Neither do I, but as the court knows.
David, they
it's not
pretty
a
much been
violation.
staying in the jury rooms?
Yes, since I have been here and since I left this morning, obviously I was gone for 9
Well, I've got an idea which one it was in this jury room that went over there.
I don't know anything.
Well, I passed Darcy talking with her when I was coming from the restroom.
Okay, should I reach out to this person?
Yeah,
Okay.
Judge, is there a way we could just do like a group admonishment right now and just plow through this afternoon, because we've got people out in the hall, and then we can deal with it at the end of the day maybe?
We would object to plowing. I think what we need to do is take this matter very seriously, and it should be, I guess we should start with the juror that raised the issue. Maybe he or she could identify who it was, and eliminates us. This basically takes a lot of time out of this whole thing.
I reached out to her, Judge.
okay. Did she say who?
No, just sent it because she was asking me a question regarding jazz upstairs, and I just sent this, so.
Okay. We're on pause for a second. Let's call her.
That could save a lot of grief.
Yeah. Got it.
Permission to go talk to the witness, Your Honor.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go grab a
Can you get Darcy on the horn for me? back up? Okay, come on right here. I thought you said, and she said that it might be different, yeah. That a juror approached you and they were talking strategies of the lawyers in the other room. Did I misunderstand?
You misunderstood.
What exactly were you told by the juror?
Strategies of the lawyer. There were two things that you and I discussed. The first was a juror approached me this morning about the notoriety of some defense counsel and how that had been discussed. She just said, and I do know specifically who that is. She said that, it did not impact her one way or another, but because of the admonitions, she felt compelled to tell me that there was a recognition about defense counsel and prior representation of defense counsel's clients. That was it.
Okay,
The other thing that you and I talked about was there were several jurors that just asked me if it's appropriate or they have the ability to preliminarily discuss how to handle like some logistics. Not anything related to this specific case. They said nothing had been discussed. They wanted to know if it's possible for them to preemptively say, hey, if we have a dispute about this particular thing, this is how we want to resolve this dispute. Not saying that there was a dispute or anything like that, or that there were any discussions. They're just talking, is it appropriate for us to talk about logistics? I explained to them the judge would give them all the information that they need, that my gut was they should not be discussing that, and we should not be discussing that until the judge has had the opportunity to talk with them.
okay, well, I'm sorry I misunderstood you.
That's okay. No, I'm
It's
glad
not
you
like I
asked.
wasn't busy this morning.
I'm glad you asked.
Okay? Position now? Do you want us to come in and ask them about your notoriety?
Can we approach?
Yeah,
Do you need me?
no,
He's got it.
go.
If you guys haven't, anyways, let me know.
You guys can talk out there. That way it doesn't carry over. Okay. work. Otherwise, nothing's gonna happen for, I'm guessing, half an hour.
Thank you, sir.
Did you figure out which one you want to complain?
I don't know, I've not heard anything from them.
Well, where's Darcy? Yeah.
I think, well. Okay. I guess. This wasn't something that,
What's up?
Streamline down, so I'm gonna start back up again.
Well, we're kind of like in limbo for like 30 minutes due to an issue. So there's going to be nothing to stream for the next 30 minutes.
Okay, so wait till then to come back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have the person? Okay. Okay.
Or suggested, I should say.
As long as you've explained to him his role in there and tolerance levels. We're off now. their break. Who's up for you guys, David?
Huh?
Who's up on this witness?
Janet? Miss
Janet? Who's doing cross?
Guys, depends.
Who's doing cross?
I am.
Okay.
It's gonna need just a couple minutes.
Why?
This goes right now.
Okay. It's okay. Who's in the bathroom there? Somebody's been there forever.
No, someone else just jumped in and
Okay. Okay.
That's the decision for tomorrow, assuming Hager stays in the morning. And I guess we should assume that, right? We should, or in the morning, assuming Hager stays. Down to 11. Yeah, you're doing good today. Just 410s, yes, basically is what you're saying. Friday's gonna be good. Let's do our Tuesday. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the long break. Are you ready to call your next witness?
I am, Your Honor. State calls Randy Miles.
There's one up front. Right in the middle. It's available if you want to go start. You need to raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, go and have a seat there. You've got an aerial mic there in front of you. Okay, you can lower your mask if it's, I want you comfortable. Okay? I need you to state your name and spell it for me. And remember, that's what you gotta talk towards the mic. Okay, you're in kind of a fishbowl here, so, okay?
All right, thank you.
Go ahead and state your name and spell it, please.
My name is Randall Miles, R-A-N-D-A-L. Last name is Miles, M-I-L-E-S.
Do you feel comfortable wearing the mask because it's kind of muffling you a bit?
I can if that would help the court.
Well, I want everybody to be able to hear you,
Sure.
okay? Ms. Grubb?
Thank you, Your Honor. Actually, you've been referred to earlier today as Dr. Miles. Would you like to be referred to as Dr., Mr., or Randy?
Either is fine.
Okay, well, let's try doctor. So Dr. Miles, I understand that you are a pharmacist, correct?
That's correct.
Could you tell us about your level of education, where you got your degrees?
Sure. I have a PharmD degree, which is a professional doctorate degree in pharmacy with Ohio State, from Ohio State.
Hold on, I gotta make sure she's able to get you.
Can you hear? Yeah.
No problem. Run out of link. I received my pharmacy doctorate at Ohio State University, College of Pharmacy, in 2006. I did a postdoctoral residency for 1 year at Mount Carmel West, and I also have an MBA.
Thank you. What year did you receive the MBA?
I believe it was 2017.
Thank you. All right. Have you ever worked anywhere other than Mount Carmel as a pharmacist?
I did some as-needed work at CVS when I first graduated, but that was not full-time or anything.
Okay. When were you hired by Mount Carmel?
2006.
Okay. And what was your level of employment in 2006?
That's the year of my residency.
Okay. And then at 2007, what did your position become?
I became a patient care pharmacist.
Okay. And describe what that is.
There's one type of pharmacist at the organization, so I would work on the floors, I would work in the main pharmacy, I basically worked wherever they needed me to cover. I would take care of the clinical duties, any emergency response for those areas, as well as facilitate procurement of drugs.
And how long were you in that position?
Approximately 5 or 6 years.
Okay. What did you progress to after that position?
In 2012, I became the pharmacy manager, also called operations manager at times.
Okay. And who did you report to in that position?
Sean O'Connell.
Okay.
What was the name?
Sean O'Connell. And what was Sean's position?
He was the director of pharmacy.
Okay. And there was another individual, Sarah Hemker, that was in pharmacy management, correct?
Correct, she was a peer.
And what was her position?
Clinical coordinator.
Okay. Is she still at the hospital?
Yes.
Is she still in that position?
No,
Is Sean O'Connell still at the hospital?
he is not.
What position does Sarah now occupy?
She works in our population health division.
Is someone currently in her former position?
Yes.
Who is that person?
Dawn Miller. Dawn Miller.
Dawn Miller? Who currently occupies the Director of Pharmacy position?
That's Corey Enders.
Okay. So let's turn our attention to the years in question. We're basically here involving the years in light green, 2015 to 2018, late fall. What did the organizational chart in the pharmacy department look like during those periods?
At Mount Carmel West, there was a director of pharmacy,
Sean?
Sean. There was a manager, or operations manager, that was myself. Sarah Hepker as the clinical coordinator, and that was the three that were basically in the leadership committee at that point in
Okay.
time.
And then how many were in the next tier down, the actual patient care or clinical pharmacists?
You know, I can't recall specifics, but there was probably over 20 at that point in time.
Okay.
Hold on one second. Are you guys hearing him okay?
Yes.
Okay.
How about
I
me?
know
Can you
you
hear
got
me?
a voice.
I do, I'll try to get a little closer to the mic if that's all right. Can you hear me now?
Better?
Okay,
All right.
Because
thanks.
I could see them straining over there. I just wanted to make sure that they could all hear you.
Now, this is a transitional question, but I've been given to understand that the way the line staff pharmacists reported was split, that some reported to you and some reported to Sean. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How many reported to you and how many reported to Sean?
Somewhere in the low teens reported to me, and the remainder reported to Sean.
Okay, so you had the bulk of them. Is
I
that
would say it was even.
Even? Okay, all right. And did that pertain during all the years that we're discussing here, 15 to 18?
Yes, as people came and went from the organization, we just tried to keep the numbers consistent.
Okay, great. Now, what were your hours in the hospital at that time?
My typical hours, I'd come in 7 o'clock or slightly before that and stay till 5 or so.
Okay. And what days of the week did that involve?
Typically Monday through Friday.
Okay. Were you on a beeper system or just a cell phone? How did people get in touch with you if they needed to outside of your regular office hours?
My cell phone number is posted in the department.
Okay. And did people feel free to use your cell phone?
I think so.
Okay. Did you receive telephone calls after hours or even in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Okay. And was there anyone else that could be called in the middle of the night if need be?
It'd be Sean O'Connell or Sarah
Okay.
Hepker.
So there were 3 that were available.
Yeah, unless they were out of the state or on vacation or something.
Was there a priority tree for that?
On the weekends, there was a specific person assigned for first call, but if they weren't available, other people could be contacted.
Okay, so there wasn't a duty week or rotating schedule?
There was, a rough schedule, but you could always call anybody if you couldn't get a hold of the first person.
Okay. Was the ethic in the pharmacy department collegial?
I think so.
Okay. And was there a free flow of information from one person to the other?
Yes.
Objection as to foundation? Sorry.
Just predicate questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ask the one predicate foundation question and then proceed.
What was the communication like in the pharmacy department?
We communicated daily.
Okay. Did you have meetings and?
There was a weekly email that would go out, kind of going over everything that went on throughout the week prior. Any other short-term changes that needed to be communicated earlier would come out, typically verbally and an email. And there was a daily, handoff in between shifts.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn our attention right now to the systems that interfaced with hospital pharmacy. Did you have information technology systems that fed into the pharmacy department, serviced the pharmacy department, or that the pharmacy department relied upon?
Yes.
What were those systems?
There was a variety of different systems that were interfaced. We had a robot that pulled some of our cart fill meds. We have a medication carousel that also held other meds. And then on the floors, there was a Pixis, piece of technology called Pixis that stored and released medications on the floors a little closer to the nurses. And then there was also some racking and other things that we would get other label systems so we could gather and get them to the right patient at the right time. And then there was billing software that was separate from that.
How did Cerner, first of all, what is Cerner?
Cerner is a brand of electronic medical record.
Okay. And did Cerner interlock with other management or record-keeping systems that the pharmacy used?
Yes, the Cerner would interface with both the robot, the carousel, and Pixis.
Okay. And when was Cerner placed into use in the hospital?
About 2012.
Okay. And is Cerner still there today?
It is not.
Okay. When did Cerner move off the stage?
October of last year.
If you know, what class of employees normally have access to a Pixis machine?
Pharmacists, pharmacy members such as pharmacy technicians and nurses.
Okay. And what would the pharmacy techs do with the Pixis machine?
They would refill it when it got below a par level, and they would look for outdates and move around stock if we had some stock outs or short supply.
Okay, and was this a scheduled function, or was this done daily or weekly?
It was done daily, also as needed, so if something stocked out, it could be filled at any point in time. There was a report that would generate and initiate communication, so we knew when something stocked out.
Okay. And what were your busiest Pixis machines in the hospital?
I'd say the ER and the ICU.
Okay. What did the nurses have to do to access the Pixis machine?
It's two-factor authentication, so it's something you know and something you have. So the knowledge portion is your ID number for work, and the something you have is your biometric ID or your fingerprint.
Okay, so and was it the same for the pharmacists and the nurses?
That is correct.
So if I were going to walk up to a Pixis machine and try to retrieve something from it, describe for me what I would do.
You would first activate the screen, typically touch the screen and
Touch
bring up
screen.
a enter prompt, and there'd be a little colon there, and you type in your username, and then it would prompt you to scan your fingerprint.
Okay, all right. Why is security like that in a Pixis machine?
To decrease risk of theft of drugs.
Okay, are there other reasons?
Sure, it's security, and it actually, Pixis can help with billing as well.
Okay, what about overall safety?
Objection, leader.
Are there further, I'll rephrase. Were there other reasons?
Well, the Board of Pharmacy requires us to have security around drugs, and
Okay.
the Pixis fulfills all their requirements.
Okay. So does the Board of Pharmacy promulgate rules?
Yes,
Okay. Do you have a large number of rules that apply to pharmacies and these machines?
the Board of Pharmacy does have a fair amount of rules, yes.
Okay. So what are the bases upon which a nurse could obtain drugs from a Pixis machine?
It would be pursuant to a physician order.
Okay. And what are the two types of orders?
Well, I don't understand exactly what you're asking.
Are there two different ways to retrieve drugs from a Pixis machine on order?
Yes, so a nurse could, after something's prospectively reviewed and authorized, They would use a profile process, which is they select the patient, they select the drug that is bolded, that is already deemed reviewed and safe and appropriate, or they could use the override process.
Okay. So what happens as far as communication between the Pixis machine and the other information that is fed into the pharmacy department on override?
The Pixis machine doesn't, so they're two separate platforms, so the Pixis machine doesn't have a lot of discrete information back. An order would have to be placed for it to be really seen in the work queue.
Okay, so if drugs are taken from the Pixis machine on override, what does the pharmacy know at that point?
We don't have good eyes on that at that period of time.
Okay, so we know that, we presume that possibly an authorized user has gone into the Pixis machine and done the things to get the drug out, correct?
Yes. That's
And
the
then
only
the
way they'd be
drug is
able-
out. And then if that person is going to administer that drug to a patient, what happens next?
I'm not a nurse, so they would follow their process. There's something called the 5 rights, but I would defer to my nursing colleagues to walk through those specific
Okay,
steps.
I'm more aiming at the bits of information that might pass along. What would the first act be that someone administering drugs would do that would send information to the pharmacy?
They would enter the order. They would enter an order.
No, I mean if they already had it on override.
They would have to enter an order into the electronic medical record or Cerner.
Okay, why don't you back up and let's start it again? Because you got yourself out there and you two aren't communicating very well.
No, we're not, are we? So if the nurse has the drugs on override, what about that drug at that time would need to be told to the pharmacy to let the pharmacy know that it was out there?
I mean, there's reports that we could run that could identify that.
Would the nurse have to go to the patient bed and scan something?
That's part of the administration process. Yes.
Okay, so I'm not talking about the 5 rights, I'm just talking about how notice would go to the pharmacy that the drug was out of the Pixis machine. That's all I'm talking about.
The order would have to be entered. And
Okay.
You can scan, you could create an order by scanning it.
Okay, thank you. We had to get the right communication. So the pharmacy, when it's scanned, would then know that there is an order out there.
Correct.
Okay. And if the order is considered out there, would it come across as some verbiage in the queue?
Orders do drop into a queue-based system in the
Okay.
electronic medical record, yes.
And what would the queue say about that order?
It just defines information from the order, and you actually have to go into it by clicking on it to see further information.
Would it say anything typically about what was going on in the override?
No.
Okay. So once this was administered, say it was administered without pharmacy review, and then it was in the queue, what would the pharmacist do with it?
At that point in time, if the pharmacist did not have a chance to prospectively review it, the electronic medical record would only have one button that they could push, which was accept. It would say complete. It was a completed order at that point in time if somebody documented on it. If you click on it, there was one button that could be selected, and that was accept.
Was there a reject option?
Not on a completed order,
And define a completed order.
one that was documented as administered already.
Okay. And that completed order would be revealed in the MAR,
Yes,
medication administration record.
that's correct.
Is
It would
that
be-
correct?
Any
Okay.
documentation of administration is on that.
Okay. Does the hospital have policies involving medications and pharmacy procedures?
Yes,
Okay. And were those policies accessible to staff?
yes.
And when a staff was onboarded, what would they be told about the policies?
They would be shown where they're at. They're requested to review key policies.
Okay. All right. Are there policies with regard to the Pixis override procedures?
Yes,
I'm going to approach the witness and hand him exhibits that are marked as states 23B, 23C, and 23D.
Are these a series of various policies?
Yes, they are,
Okay, you don't have to tell me what they are, let them identify them.
yeah, okay.
I just want to make sure you're showing them multiple documents
Yes.
involving several policies.
Three documents.
yes, I've seen these before. Yep.
Are these documents substantially similar as far as type?
Yes,
Okay. And what do these documents refer to?
the process to utilize override in the situation that would be
Okay.
appropriate.
All right.
Okay, you both can't talk at the same time.
What did you say after the process to utilize override?
In the situations it would be appropriate.
Do all of these documents have dates on them relating to when they were in effect?
Yes,
Okay. And they were in effect at different times, correct?
yes,
Okay. Do they all share or almost identical special comments on the front page?
from what I could discern from my review, yes.
Okay. I'm going to, may I publish, Your Honor?
Any objection?
No.
Okay. I'm going to publish 23D, which was updated January of 18, and which relates to a good portion of our inquiry today.
You have it on the screen in front of you, and it's on the big screen too.
Yes. Dr. Miles, I'm going to,
Before you go any further, can you guys see that okay? Okay.
I'm going to direct your attention to special comments. Okay? And it starts, override medications are medications that can be accessed by nursing staff before review, correct?
Correct.
And it has 2 bullet points under it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you explain what those bullet points mean?
The sentence before that states that there are 2 allowable exceptions. And that's the LIP, or the licensed independent practitioner, controls the ordering, dispensing, and administration
Okay.
of the drug.
Let's take down the pace a little bit. I know you want to get it all out there, but her fingers are going to catch on fire. We don't want that, okay?
Correct. So the licensed independent practitioner, or somebody with prescription authority, controls the ordering, dispensing, and administration of the drug. But like in the operating room, endoscopy suite, emergency room, or cath lab suite, so if the physician is physically present during a procedure and are ordering the drugs and watching them be administered, or emergency situations which time does not permit the pharmacist review, such as stat orders or circumstances where patient harm or discomfort could result from a delay in administration of a medication, including situations in which the patient experiences a sudden change in clinical status.
Okay, thank you. So could you define for us what ordering, dispensing, and administration means with respect to the drug that would be, drug or drugs that would be dispensed on override? What do those terms of art mean?
Well, the ordering of the drug is a order that has a dose, a route, what product to administer. The dispensing is the act of dispensing, so that is like authorizing it for use, if you will. So a pharmacist reviews it and it releases or we dispense it from the pharmacy. Physicians authorizing that, or a provider that has prescriptive authority authorizing the use of that. And the administration of the drug is the review and observation of actually administering that drug.
Where is the pharmacy department under this bullet point?
They are not in the process.
Okay. At all?
Correct.
What is Lexicorp and how is it used?
Did you mean LexiComp?
Lexicon, yeah.
It's a tertiary reference for medication information, dosing, compatibility, indications, et cetera.
Okay. And is this used widely in your department?
Yes.
Okay. And have you personally used it?
Yes.
What are the IV guidelines in your hospital? What is that?
It's a reference that has common indications and dosages of a variety of drugs given IV. So there'll be one IV guideline per medication.
Okay.
So it'll have adverse effects, other things. It's a reference to familiarize yourself with that product.
Okay.
This is the same as this one, we just labeled it for us.
I'm going to hand an exhibit 26BB to the witness. Dr. Miles, what is this exhibit?
That's a policy.
Is it entitled Medication Administration and Self-Administration Guidelines?
That's what I remember, yes.
And it's a 5-page document, correct?
I did not count the pages.
Okay. Did you happen to note the date on the back of promulgation?
I believe it was 2017.
Yes, correct. And it is kept in the regular course of business at Mount Carmel? Or was kept in the regular course of business at Mount Carmel?
It was in our policy folder, yes.
Okay. Correct. May I publish, Your Honor?
There's no objection, that's fine.
Objection.
Any objection?
Could you please review number 23, the paragraph at the top? Tell us what that is and what it means.
It's one of the subheadings, and it's basically stating that patient conditions warrant giving medications outside of IV guidelines at times. So I would interpret that as you're individualizing
Objection, Your
patient
Honor.
care.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think there's been a foundation that he wrote the policies in terms of his interpreting them, but I don't mind him saying what it says.
Okay. You want to rephrase, or do you want me to rule?
I'll rephrase. Dr. Miles, have you used this policy
Yes,
in the past? So you're familiar with its use as you interface with other people in the hospital, including physicians?
yes.
Okay. And if there is a situation where a physician is interested in making an order outside of IV guidelines, what happens?
There should be an escalation of the question and research of supporting evidence for said indication and dose.
Okay, and when you say an escalation of the issue, where does that go?
It could go to the clinical coordinator, myself. It could be that person diving into the literature if they have the opportunity, or if the provider furnished that would be shared. So the IV guidelines could be updated.
Okay, so what is the expectation under this policy when you are dealing with a physician as far as what you are going to receive from that physician?
I mean, it states that if a reference cannot be located or provided by the prescriber, it would be reviewed by others.
Okay, and they talk about special approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Dr. Miles, was there a time in 2018 when a pharmacist by the name of Talon Schroyer was your direct report?
Yes,
Okay. Does Talon still work at the hospital?
he does not.
Okay. Was there a time in October of 2018 where Talon Schroyer sought you out at the end of one of his shifts and expressed a concern to you.
Yes.
What was that concern?
My recollection is he stopped me as I was going to get a cup of coffee, and he asked to speak to me. He said he had a concern about a dose of a medication, and he gave me some information about the patient. I don't remember any other real specifics about that.
Okay. Who was the physician involved in this?
It was Dr. William Husel.
Okay. And what did you tell Talon about your conversation with him?
I asked him to put in a voice report if there was a concern, and it was the end of his day and end of his week, and he was packed up, ready to go. So I took it upon myself to enter it.
So you did it?
I entered a voice, well, I facilitated a voice report being entered. I spoke with another colleague, and then she ultimately put it in, is my recollection.
Okay. Who was that other colleague?
It was Katie Barja.
Okay. Did you ever see the voice report that was put in?
Yes.
First of all, what is a voice report?
Voice report is anything that's not colleague-related. Event reporting could be somebody fell in the hallway, could be medication, could be an extravasation. It's just a repository for data, so it can be reviewed and discerned and sent out to the right people.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Right.
I'm approaching the witness and I'm going to tender states
She
exhibit
seen it?
20.
Has she seen it?
At some point you have. This is the first one? Oh, what the heck. I'll bring them all. The record should reveal that there are three such. To just conserve time, I'm going to handle and 23A, B, and C to the witness.
Okay.
Please review.
There's 22, A, B, and C.
He's got them all.
Yeah, no, I think you said 23.
Did I?
Record, I think.
Did I say 23? I meant 22. Yeah, 23 is policy and procedure. I took them home up there. We didn't show them. You good? Okay. Sir, were these voice reports, do they appear to be true and accurate? copies of what was reported?
From what
Through this
what I can
system.
recall, yes.
Okay.
I'm
It-
sorry, wait, you talked at the same time. What was your answer?
From what I can recall, yes.
Okay, all right. And they're kept, these are kept in the ordinary course of business at the hospital.
That's correct,
This is a routine function.
yes.
Okay. May I, Your Honor?
I assume there's no objection.
Any objection?
No.
Okay. Okay, there's the page 1 for the first. And this appears to be about James Timmons, age 39, male. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you guys able to see that? It's kind of bright.
Too much? Do you guys want me to adjust a little bit? Oops. Is that better? You mean I actually successfully adjusted a piece of technology? It's impossible. Okay. Do you agree with the brief factual description of what happened here?
Yes,
Is this representative of what was reported to you by Talon Schroyer?
I don't remember the Dilaudid portion, but I do remember the fentanyl and the Versed.
Okay. What is rhabdo? Do you know?
It's rhabdomyolysis. It's an acute situation. I'd let a physician better
Okay,
articulate that.
we'll ask somebody else, just for the jury, to see if there's anything else in there. And then it said, per risk management, we'll send a peer review?
Yes,
Okay. And was that your expectation, that that's what would happen?
yes,
That it would go to peer review?
yes.
For the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what is a peer review or peer review system in the medical world?
That is when a specific case with a patient goes in front of a group of physician peers to get evaluated and tested against the literature. I'm not familiar with exactly what happens. I've not been purview to any of those sort of processes. It's a very closed session. It's private. There's no follow-up given afterwards.
Okay. And do you know whether or not that peer review ever happened?
Then or now? What time are you referring to that?
The peer review that was thought to happen out of voice report 1, did that happen?
It did not.
Okay. Were you privy to why it didn't happen?
I came to the understanding later on that it was canceled.
Okay. All right. Did you later receive a series of emails in November of 2018 regarding Dr. Husel and patients being given high doses of fentanyl?
I recall 2 emails, yes.
Yes, okay. Your Honor, I'm going to hand to the witness a series of documents that are entitled as follows. States Exhibit 20A, Dr. Miles, were these emails that were received by you in your capacity as a manager in the pharmacy department at Mount Carmel West Hospital?
Portions of them were. Some
Okay.
of them were from other people that I wasn't attached to.
Okay. Do you believe these were kept in the regular course of business?
It's my understanding.
Okay. May I publish, Your Honor?
Objection?
I'm placing State's Exhibit 20A. There are two parts. There's a bottom and a top. I'm going to start with the bottom on the thread. What is 20A? What does it say?
Do you want me to read the whole email, or?
Oh, just, you can summarize.
What is your understanding of what that document says?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was notification to me that there was a dose that was high for a palliative ventilator withdrawal. And it was communicated to me from Greg Dresbach that worked night shift.
Okay. And who was, there's a patient number, is that correct?
That's correct, that's their account number.
And it appears to be a 75-year-old person that was admitted with worsening edema.
Yes, with shortness of breath and worsening edema.
Okay, okay. And there was what Greg Dresbach referred to as a cocktail of fentanyl and midazolam given to this patient in the course of a palliative withdrawal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm going to move it now to the top part where you sent a reply email. Is that what you did?
Yes,
Okay. And this says, okay, I pushed it up the chain of command. I put in a voice on this one,
correct.
correct? Okay. I previously presented to you State's Exhibit 22B, which was a voice report dated 12/19/2018. Is this a voice report that you prepared?
That one, I believe, was the one I prepared.
Okay. I'm going to place the top page on the projector. And this is with regard to patient Rebecca Walls, 75-year-old lady, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a paragraph, long paragraph here, of your reasoning why you were presenting the voice report. Is that correct?
Correct, that's a cut and paste of that, and with the verbiage on there, believe it was the same patient, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to re-review the document.
Okay. What would help? Would the discharge date, admission date?
Yep, that appears to be the same patients, the right
Okay,
number. Yeah.
all right. And it's, you've said there have been a few instances of highly questionable palliative withdrawal orders by Dr. Husel, correct?
Yes, that was basically a copy and paste from Greg's email.
Okay. And what happened with this voice report? Do you know?
Yes, I sought out and spoke to Dr. Swanner and asked what happened with the last one, and that's when I found out peer review was canceled in October. And I requested it be reviewed promptly.
Okay. Why did you feel that prompt review was warranted?
Because it wasn't reviewed, the previous case wasn't reviewed because the peer review was canceled.
What were your concerns at that time?
Duplication at that point in time, that was my understanding of a second instance of this happening.
Okay.
So I wanted it to be reviewed promptly.
Okay. And as a pharmacist, what do you think your primary function is in the context of the hospital?
Review medications for safe and appropriate use.
Okay. Then there came a time when, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. Was there a time where you received an email from Greg Dressbach dated November 21st of 2018?
Yes,
And was that kept in the ordinary course of business at the hospital?
yes.
Okay. May I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
And this has a top and a bottom. There's an email from, purports to be from Dressbach there, but there's a response, and I'll show that in a minute.
Can you tighten that up a little bit, because it's kind of fuzzy,
Tighten
even
up.
with my glasses on.
Okay.
You got lucky once. There you go.
Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay.
Is that much better for you guys?
Yeah. Okay, and this one starts, here we go again, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when he says, here we go again, what's he talking about?
I would assume he was talking about the second time since Monday, because the
Okay.
previous one was the 19th.
Okay. And he says, it goes into a little bit of the patient. The patient's an 82-year-old woman, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There was a cocktail of fentanyl, 2,000 micrograms, and 10 milligrams of midazolam used in a palliative withdrawal, correct?
That's what he stated, yeah.
Okay. There's some other information in there about the nurse and the vials and the charting.
Is that a question, Your
I think she's getting to it, but
I'm getting-
let's get to the question. Sustain.
Which we probably don't need to get into right now. But then above, there's an indication that you did something with this email. What did you do with it?
I forwarded on to Sarah. I was on PTO at that time, but I still logged in and checked my email. And I saw this, so I immediately forwarded it on.
Okay. And were you on vacation or?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, doctor, when you say PTO,
Paid time off, I'm sorry.
okay,
Thank you.
I mean, this is your life, we're trying to understand it.
Yeah, we're acronym rich, I apologize.
Well, and you define things with the word you're defining too, that's beside the point.
Actually, we are too, so it's just a matter of meshing the two systems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have our own lingo.
And, you know, in truck language, PTO, I think, is power takeoff. Is that right? I'm pretty
I couldn't
sure,
tell you.
yeah. So. So what did you do as a result of that email?
That email, I called Janet Whitty, who was my next one up at that point in time, because my immediate supervisor was on a leave of absence.
Yeah. Why was that?
I believe he had surgery.
Yeah, yeah, this is Sean O'Connell, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, he had surgery. Okay. So, did you forward this information to a person by the name of Katie Barga?
I also forwarded it to her.
Okay. And this is kind of a cut and paste, is that right? the bottom?
Yes,
Okay, so you use the old email and then sent it to who?
yes, I sent it to Katie.
Okay,
Okay, when you concentrate, your voice goes down. It's human nature, don't worry about it, okay? But when you look at something, you're concentrating, your voice will go down. I want her to be able to hear your answer.
Okay.
okay. And what did you tell Katie?
I said I'm on PLT, or paid leave time, another acronym for time off. Today, can you please escalate this as well? And then gave her my cell phone number.
And your comment was, we have significant risk with this.
Yes.
And then the top part, have you ever seen the top part?
I was CC'd on it, so yes, I apparently saw it at some
Okay.
point in time.
And what does this purport to be?
A statement from Katie that says that there's a third case. Is there any way we can manage it sooner rather than later? I know we have meetings set up next week, but is somebody able to talk to the physician as soon as possible?
Okay, thank you. And as a result of this third incident, what did you do with respect to a voice report?
I was on time off at that point in time. I believe Katie was the one that entered this one.
Okay. Did you ever review it in real time, or was today the first time you ever saw it?
Well, I wasn't able to review it in real time because I was on vacation at that point in time, but the next time, you can't access the voice system from outside of the confines of the organization.
Okay,
So the next time I was at the organization, I reviewed it, yes.
okay. And that's States Exhibit 22C that I presented to you before.
Yes, that was the
Okay.
record of that.
And that looked familiar?
Yes,
Is it a document kept in the ordinary course of business at Mount Carmel Hospital? Or
Yes.
was it at that time?
yes.
Okay.
Were you able to get all that?
Yes.
And this purports to involve Mrs. Penix, 82-year-old lady, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And purports to involve treatment by a physician on November 20th of 2018. Correct?
Was this, no, let's see, that was the last night at, yes, the November 20th, that was in the
Yeah,
late evening,
okay.
yes, correct.
And it was palliative withdrawal? Is that
That's what it
correct?
appears to be.
Okay, that was the subject matter, correct. And the expectation at that time was what? That what would happen with this?
That would go to peer review.
Okay. A moment, Your Honor.
Sure. How you guys holding up? They're getting there. Can you guys drive till 5? Go away to 5, or does somebody need a break? Because if one person needs a break, we'll take a break.
Can we just take a little stretch break, Judge, just so it's kind of late in the day while we're organizing here
That's
for a minute?
fine. I was more worried about them than I was you.
I know, I've been at it, so I was just,
Is she, I'm sorry, is she done?
no,
No.
we're just asking her about something, we thought maybe a little stretch break would be okay instead of having people excused.
I was just, if she was done, I was gonna take advantage and let him have 10 minutes, but. They all got great bladders. Said y'all got great bladders then, right? That wasn't a question, that was a commentary.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple additional points.
Do you have questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Questions? Let's turn our attention back to State's Exhibit 22B. That's the, I'm sorry. The reported severity. Now, this is one of the voice reports that you made, correct?
That's the one I made, yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Can you comment upon the reported severity, 0, NA, or unknown? What does that mean?
That means it's not quantified yet. I didn't want to put a label on it because I didn't know, without peer review happening, I didn't want to stratify that. It could be adjusted later.
Okay. And on the same document, did you enter the actual severity level 4 on that?
No, I don't believe I did.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Menashe?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Good afternoon.
Hello?
How are you?
Good.
Good. You know, I will just start with this voice. Showing you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 22A with respect to James Timmons. Remember
Yes.
this? Okay.
Yes.
And so we can back up a second. James Timmons is associated with the phone call you received from Talon Schroyer, correct?
No, he called me in the morning. That was from October.
I'm sorry, what?
That was from October. He talked to me in the morning. There was no phone call.
Oh, I'm sorry. He talked to you, I think, when you said you were getting coffee.
Correct.
And as a result of that, based on what he told you, did you make a voice report?
No, I had a discussion with Katie, and Talon had left and had not entered it, so we decided we needed to enter it at the moment.
I remember in your Columbus Police Department interview, right towards the beginning, you were asked to describe your job duties. Do you remember that question?
Yes?
And you told the detectives that you basically fix things.
Yes, we have a lot of machinery. We have some of it is aged, so keep our processes moving smoothly. Could be anything from helping facilitate a broken door that's in our department to, procuring new hardware, procuring new items to support the distribution needs for the department.
certainly as part of your job as, in operations, that if you had information that drugs were administered that had potentially hastened the death of a patient, you would have run and done a voice report, would you not have?
Yes.
In fact, just common sense, wouldn't you almost even thought to call 911?
I don't know what I would have thought back then.
And instead, you went to Katie. Right? You didn't do a voice report. You went and told Katie?
Our patient safety risk officer, I had a discussion because quite honestly, I wasn't sure about the dosages, so I felt like it needed further review. And I discussed about going to peer review.
And when you say you weren't sure about the dosages, just so we're clear, how many years have you been a licensed pharmacist?
At that point in time,
Yes.
in 2018, several, 6.
6 years. So it's Katie that actually enters the voice report in that states Exhibit 22A, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and that's why her name is on top right here. It says entered by Katie Barga.
correct.
And then on page 2, you were just asked about the reported severity.
Correct.
And then right underneath that, would you agree there's a line that says actual severity level?
I do.
In the course of your role at the time, and again, your role was what?
Manager,
Manager of the pharmacy.
that's correct.
And so you're familiar with these voice reports.
Yes.
How long just generally does it take to input a voice report, would you estimate?
It depends on the amount of information that's needed to be put in. So it's variable. Could be 5, could be 10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes to put in a voice report.
Yes.
Right here on reported severity, with respect to States Exhibit 22A, it says 4, correct?
Yes.
And then actual severity, it also says 4,
Yes.
correct? And you would agree with me, based on your role as the manager and knowledge of voice reports, that the scale of a voice report goes up to 9.
Yes.
And a 9 indicates the most severe, noting an event that contributed to death. That's what a 9 is, right?
Yes.
And this is a 4.
I didn't score that.
Because you didn't do the voice report.
My understanding is Katie Barge's role is to actually do the actual severity level.
Have you ever heard of an expression, garbage in, garbage out?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Means with poor data, you have poor assumptions to make decisions.
And based on what you told this jury, you're the one that reported the conversation with Talon Schroyer to Katie, right?
Yes.
So I want to go to the next page of this voice report with respect to James Timmons. Actually, sorry, I will go to page 4 of 6. Who's Erlene Romine?
She was the manager of the ICU at the time, nurse manager.
She oversaw the ICU at the time.
From a nursing perspective, yes.
And right here it says follow-up actions, and would you agree it notes followed up by, and it indicates her name?
Yes.
Flipping the page to page 5 of 6, what does it say under details?
I need more information about this issue. These medications would be appropriate for a palliative patient.
The manager of the ICU wrote that in the voice report
The nurse manager did, yes.
upon her review.
I guess you'd have to double check with her, but that's my understanding.
Stop, everybody. There's too many people talking first, okay? we'll stop at the question as it's pending, you have an objection as the speculative, and he attempted an answer. Are you up with me, court reporter? Okay. Rephrase the question, sustained.
Absolutely. Page 4 of 6. Does it have a date
Yes,
above Earlene Romine's name?
yes.
And what's the date, if you could?
Yeah, October 31st.
And there's a time associated with it as well, right?
Yes,
And then on the following page, there's a detail section,
yes,
and that's where it says these medications would be appropriate for a palliative patient. Correct?
yes, that's what it states.
And then further down, there's a detail section, there's a section where your name is indicated. Is that right?
That is mine, yes.
And the date on that is a month later, on 11th, almost a month later, 11/30/2018. You see
Right.
that? And there's a details section there, right?
Yes.
And you've written nothing.
Not in that section.
I remember in your Columbus Police Department interview, you talked about, it was part of your job to fix things, and that when Talon Schroyer told you about this incident, it was like a puddle that you wanted to clean up off the floor. Do you remember saying something like that?
I do not.
You would agree with me that a slip and fall is different from hastening someone's death.
Potentially. I mean, a slip and fall could cause somebody's death.
Let's talk about 22B, Rebecca Walls. This voice report does appear to be entered by you.
Yes,
Okay. Just want to go here. Reported severity, you have indicated, have you not, 0 or unknown?
yes, I indicated unknown.
And certainly, because you're familiar with the 0 to 9 scale of severity, that if you believed you were reporting an event which contributed to death, you would have listed it as a 9.
If at that time that's what my thought was, yes.
And the actual severity of that incident upon review was noted to be a 4, correct?
That's what it appears to be.
Going now to the third voice report that you were shown, 22C. This one relates to Melissa Penix. Does that look familiar?
Yes,
And this report, again, not entered by you, but by Katie Barga, is that correct?
that's correct.
And this, with respect to Melissa Penix, reported severity is what?
4,
And the determined actual severity is noted as what?
4.
I want to ask you, there's an indication there of DNR-CC. Do you know difference between DNR-CCA and DNR-CC?
Not specifically.
Would you don't know what each one means?
I don't use it in my daily activities of work now.
Okay. I want to go to, you were shown States Exhibits 23B, C, and D. There were a series of policies and procedures with respect to the dispensing system. Do you recall those?
Yes,
I want to go over, if we could. I'll just take the one from 2015. This is States Exhibit 23C. Would you agree with me that attached to each one of these is a list of medications that is kept or was kept in the Pixis machine at the hospital during the relevant time frame?
I mean, not all those medications were in every Pixis machine, but many of those were in Pixis machines, yes.
And any medication that was in a Pixis machine somewhere could be overridden, correct?
If it was on that list, yes.
Okay, if I could approach, well, let me just go through each one. I'll try to save time late in the day. 23C. Does it appear that these are alphabetical?
Yes.
These listed medication? Okay, just want to, here's fentanyl, correct?
Yes.
All right, and just alphabetically, I want to turn the page and look and see if you see ketamine, where it would appear alphabetically.
Do not.
Okay, you do not see ketamine in 23C. I want to go to 23D. These aren't. Where it would appear alphabetically, do you see ketamine?
I do not.
Okay. But you do see on the prior page where fentanyl is.
I do.
I say this because if a medication is not kept in a Pixis machine, it would potentially be kept in the basement. I'm sorry, on the first floor in the pharmacy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if a medication isn't in a machine, then hypothetically, if I was Dr. Husel, I wouldn't ever have to call and ask for an override on that medication, correct?
There would not be interface with the pharmacy during an override.
So there wouldn't even be a call,
Not that I'm aware of.
right? And so if a medication isn't in the Pixis machine, like ketamine, but it's downstairs in the pharmacy, because I think you had your own medicine safe down there, did you not?
Yes.
The medication is in that safe in the pharmacy, and it's not in the Pixis, and I am a doctor in ICU, and I need ketamine. How do I obtain some ketamine for a patient?
They'd have to put in an order for it.
And it would come down to the pharmacy, correct?
Yeah, go through the queue-based system and it'd be reviewed and dispensed.
And if it's in the pharmacy, and only in the pharmacy, it couldn't be overridden, correct?
Correct.
It's not in a drawer.
Correct.
Also, with respect to what you were asked about overrides, I think generally on direct you were asked about these bullet points. I'll just go to 23D if we could. This second bullet point right here, under special comments about overrides. Would you agree with me that it says that overrides can happen in emergency situations when time does not permit the pharmacist review, such as a stat, all caps, orders, or circumstances when patient harm or discomfort could result from delay in administration of a medication? Goes on, does it not, to say, including situations in which the patient experiences a sudden change in clinical status.
I agree, that's what it says.
That's when an override is okay.
That's what that policy said at the time.
And these were the Mount Carmel policies during the relevant time frame that we're talking about here today.
Yes.
Also, if I'm a nurse and I decide to do an override, I don't need a doctor's permission to do the override, correct?
They would need an order for the medication.
Sure, but the order, I could get a verbal order. Give me, 200, 500 micrograms of fentanyl. They get the verbal order and they type it in. It's the person that's potentially taking the medicine out that decides whether to override it, correct?
Yes.
And you said on your direct, the persons that have access to Pixis machines are the nurses and the pharmacists.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that includes also pharmacy techs that come and fill the machines?
Correct.
remember the date of your interview with Columbus Police Department?
I do not remember the specific date.
Would it sound about right that it was in December of 2018?
Yes,
And where was that interview?
it was at Mount Carmel West.
And during that interview, you were asked about dosages. Do you remember those questions?
Yes,
And you indicated to the police at the time, did you not, that dosing is very individualized?
I stated that, yes.
And then you went on to explain that tolerance is one of the factors that one must consider when looking at dosages.
That's correct.
And that's true, right? And surely, as I know that you testified that you were a pharmacist who reviewed orders at one point in your career, determining the appropriateness of an order that comes through must take into account someone's tolerance.
Yes,
And that can include not just the medication they've recently received at the hospital, but let's say if they're an opioid addict.
yes.
I want to show you, again, State's Exhibit 22A with respect to James Timmons. The narrative here, does it not? 39-year-old came in after being found down in a basement for an unknown amount of time with a needle in his arm.
Yes,
And then it goes on to say that he was pulseless and CPR started. Correct?
yes,
And urine positive for cocaine and marijuana.
correct.
Certainly someone that might be an IV drug user might have a different tolerance than, let's say, someone that doesn't abuse heroin.
Object.
Okay. Let's lay some foundation.
Sure.
And we're talking about different classes of drugs here, so
I
I think
understand.
we're.
That's why I wanted her to lay some foundation.
Okay. So I'm happy to go back. Tolerance. Couple ways to look at tolerance. Fair to say you can look at tolerance of the amount of medication that someone has received, let's say in their most recent hospital stay, right? Like how much fentanyl do they get in 6 days before the order comes through?
Sure.
That could be something to look at for tolerance.
You look at the response from that, yes.
Yes. And then would it be, as a pharmacist, relevant to you when determining the appropriateness of a medication to know if someone for whom an order was being placed, particularly a fentanyl order, had an addiction to opioids?
Yes,
Which explains why during your Columbus Police Department interview, you said, did you not, opioids are something you get tolerant to?
I can't specifically recall, but that's true.
And then I remember when you were asked the question about fentanyl, and you said that fentanyl was a drug that was used in the ICU.
Yes,
And so the use of fentanyl alone was not a red bell for you,
correct,
or a red flag.
yes.
I want to turn to an issue that just relates to your testimony about a pharmacist and reviewing an order.
Okay,
Prospective review. If I'm a pharmacist, I get the order, it comes down, I review it for appropriateness. And always safety is in my mind, right, as a pharmacist.
yes,
I review it for appropriateness, and then if I think it's appropriate, I hit verify.
yes,
Then there is what you discussed as a retrospective review. And your testimony was that upon a retrospective review, there's no other option than to hit verify.
accept.
accept. You would agree with me, though, that there is still a comment section on a retrospective review.
Not from my understanding. It's, you hit accept, that's the only option, period.
And so you would be, as a pharmacist, hitting an accept button if you looked at a dosage and you thought that dosage could have killed someone.
Yes.
And you would never have reported that?
Are you asking me as a pharmacist, or are you asking?
Yeah, you as a pharmacist. Like, let's say that you had retrospectively reviewed any dosage that you thought might have hastened someone's death.
Okay. Either identify you're using it, because it's not on the record, you turned it around.
So, well, I can just ask you the numbers. Let's say a 2,000 order of micrograms of fentanyl comes to you for a and it's a retrospective review.
In my practice, I would ask questions, yes.
How would you ask questions?
I would make a phone call.
And who would you call?
I would call the provider that was linked with that order.
What would you ask them?
What was the course of action and what happened and why was it utilized? How
And
was
if
it
they-
utilized?
Oh, sorry. Because making those calls is part of being a pharmacist.
Yes.
How many calls would you say in your career reviewing orders that you made to providers, just maybe upstairs?
Well, I also practiced on the floor, so there was access to them immediately. So if you want to just ask questions, how many questions I've asked physicians? Thousands.
So fair to say that's a pretty common practice.
Yes.
And if you ask questions, I'm assuming in your training and expertise, if you ask questions and you don't get enough information, I'm assuming you ask more questions.
Yes.
Like if somebody said to you, oh, that medication was for a procedure, and you wanted to know more about the procedure, fair to say you'd say, what kind of procedure?
Yes.
So going back to the options in the machine, you were asked during your Columbus Police Department interview about when a pharmacist prospectively can reject a medication.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
I do.
And do you remember telling them that actually, that the nurses actually don't necessarily see a rejection of a medication?
Yes, there's a small icon that changes.
And you indicate to the police that it can be of no consequence to the nurse. It's more of a pharmacist to pharmacist. Like, hey, I'm working on this, don't touch it type of thing.
That's often how it's utilized, yes.
That's how, when you say it's utilized, the reject button.
The reject button. So if they're clarifying or calling a physician, they would hit the reject button.
And so it's really pharmacy focused.
I would say that's fair.
One moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, can we approach? Just
Yeah.
right here.
Just one of you.
Oh, just one? Okay,
Because it's just a logistics question.
yeah. Break for the night because she's got some more time there and it's a good breaking point. Ladies and gentlemen, remember the admonitions. Let's not discuss anything about the case at all. Okay? You're not to do your own investigation or disregard the press and the media. Okay? So if something comes on the TV involving somebody, you ignore it, you turn it off. Okay? Any questions? Okay, and the lawyers are gonna avoid you. Okay, we're gonna get started at 9 in the morning. Okay, you guys have a great evening. Get lots of sleep. Okay, I'll see you guys in the morning. Just relax. I gotta talk to you for a second.
They said all right, so.
Yeah, they're fine. I thought you were trying to walk on out the door.
No, it's just, he said rise.
Doctors sometimes run out of here, so,
No,
okay.
follow directions.
Yep, just give me 1 second, make sure I got all my stuff here.
Have a great evening, guys.
Thank you. That's mine.
At least I'm not driving an hour right
I don't see
away.
any more red stickers.
Okay, let's go back on. Okay, doctor, you're on the stand right now. You're gonna have to come back in the morning, okay?
Oh, Your Honor, we have Dr. Hagris via Zoom at 9.
From Egypt, we
From
told you about
Egypt.
this at the beginning.
Okay, how long will this take? Because this man, I don't want to tie up his entire day with sitting in the hallway.
Judge, it's already set. I mean, they're like on a different time zone. That's why we said we had to do a hard
I understand.
start time. I don't know.
I can deal with the jury on it. If I tell him to come back at, let's say, 2:30,
I would say noon. But we
Noon?
have, he's represented by Mr. Gobble. We can be in constant contact with Mr. Gobble, see how the morning's going.
are you flexible tomorrow?
I can be.
You're gonna be,
Yes.
okay? Okay, we have a gentleman testifying from Egypt that we have to set up special things for, so we'll, through your attorney, we will get in touch with when to return. Okay?
I'll be here.
Do you need anything for your employee?
No.
Okay. You're excused.
Was I loud enough for PM?
Huh?
Was I better with volume towards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's human nature that when people concentrate, their voice goes down because they're busy concentrating. So these are the things I do. I used to teach doctors how to testify. So
Yeah, I totally
it's okay.
appreciate that.
Should have taken my course. Kidding. Have a good night.
For nothing here.
And no one likes seeing me. That's okay. Okay. I'll let him clear the room.
See you around.
Thank you, sir.
We have to clear the record, so. And I always ask, is there anything for the record? So, Ms. Grubb, anything for the record?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
Those in the back of the courtroom, keep it down for a minute, let me finish.
Are we all set with the Zoom in the morning? Is that technology in place?
It'll be in place, don't worry. I thought you already sent out the,
The link is, but are we
Link
just going to
is.
do it on this then, or do we have TVs? I mean, I don't know how you're going to.
it'll be done in here.
Yeah, but
So
on this
you will
projector?
see the Zoom actually up on the screen.
So there's nothing more we need to do on that?
Not that I'm aware of, I will ask Darcy before she goes. Ms. Menashe, anything for the record?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, record's closed. Hey, Janet.